Hi, I'm Whitney Espich, the CEO of the MIT Alumni Association, and I hope you enjoy this digital production created for alumni and friends like you.
Welcome everyone to all my fellow MIT 10s. My name is Narain Talapragada, and thanks for joining us for the third installment of the MIT 10 Brass Rat Chats. I'm class of 2013, so on the upper end of the MIT 10 spectrum now, but proud to be, for now, young alumnus, a graduate of the last decade, and the host of tonight's event. So this series is meant to be a place where MIT 10 alums can come together as young professionals to explore career areas of interest. And obviously, we've all studied different things, and tonight's focus is more on the bio side, but you'll see that this is part of an ongoing series we've had, ranging from how to be a program manager in tech all the way to, I think our next event is on social impact. And there can and will be more panels on more topics. And if you've got ideas, we're always down to hear them as well. We're really excited to have you joining us tonight because we have some wonderful panelists who can help us answer some questions that I think we're all grappling with. So, maybe you're in your first job after graduating, or you've been in only one job since you've graduated and you're happy with it. You might be in grad school, finishing up, wondering what to do next in this challenging economy and this challenging world post-COVID. You might be about to jump back into school to get some kind of an advanced degree. You might be hopping from job to job. You might be someone like me, and I actually recently took a complete detour and worked on a campaign as a campaign organizer, so that's a story for a different day. But I think all of us are probably wondering what's next, right? It's the age-old question that we millennials face. And what do we really want to be when we grow up, right? So regardless of where you're on your path, this series is for all of us to gather kind of in a virtual fireside chat and to hear some stories and insight from fellow alumni. So tonight, we've got two alums who have been very successful in biotechnology, and I'm really, really excited to have them share their stories. So our first guest tonight is Dr. Leila Perhaji, who's the founder and CEO of ReviveMed. So Leila got her PhD in Course 20 in 2016. While she was at MIT, she developed a pioneering AI platform for drug discovery and successfully founded a award-winning venture-backed startup based in Cambridge. And she's focusing on developing therapeutics for metabolic diseases, a really active area of interest. And previously, before starting her company, Leila worked at top-notch research institutes like ETH Zurich. Living in Switzerland sounds awesome. Would love to hear more about that, as well as large pharma companies like Merck and Takeda. Her innovative work has received several prestigious awards. She's been featured on TV in several media outlets. She was selected as a TED Fellow. She gave a TED Talk, which has received over 1.8 million views. That's no small feat right there. And this year, she was named one of MIT Technology Review's 35, I think it's 35, but innovators under 35. So really, really excited to have you here with us tonight, Leila. Nick Davis is our other panelist, and he received his PsyD degree, his doctorate in science in Course 20 in 2019. And he's an expert in industrialized drug discovery, quantitative systems biology, and translational medicine. And he's got a decade of scaling technologies in biotech and pharma. So with a passion for improving access to quality healthcare, Nick founded Epitoire in 2018, where he serves as president and CEO. And Epitoire is a drug discovery company that focuses on developing small molecule gene therapies. Really excited to hear more about that for complex multigenic diseases. And he's got an international R&D team of drug hunters, medicinal chemists, and structural biologists who have brought more than 40 different chemistries into the clinic. So that's really exciting, having some real world impact with your degree. Over his career, Nick has advised several dozen early stage biotech and university spinouts in diagnostics. And it sounds like he's also worked with executive teams at pharma companies and investment banks. So lots of diverse experiences. And I should add lots of the common entry points into biotechnology that you may be considering yourself. So it'll be really valuable to hear his perspective on that. So currently, Nick is incubating a new company that he co-founded last year. And if it's not too stealth, maybe he'll have a few words to say about that too. So we've got a good program for you tonight. I will be back later to moderate the audience Q&A, but I will first hand it off to Ellen Stahl, who leads the MIT Alumni Association's alumni career programs, and she'll be our moderator for the panel portion of the evening. So Ellen, I hand it over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Narain. And thanks to the MIT committee for partnering on this program. It's been great to work with you all. I'm really grateful to have Layla and Nick here with us tonight. I'm excited to learn about the creation of their new ventures and the experiences that got them to their leadership roles. In my many years of career counseling, I find that for most of us, when it comes to careers, we're all in sort of this state of evolution. It's not always a huge transition. It could mean loving what you do and making the conscious choice to deepen your own expertise or your focus. While for others, the question of what's next sometimes propels us forward with energy and motivation. And sometimes the not knowing hits us like a roadblock. I was one of those people for sure earlier in my career, so I can relate to that. And I think whether you're doing what you love now, whether you're energized by figuring out what's next or you're feeling stuck. What I used to tell all the students that I worked with in the career office prior to my role now is that I often find that talking to people who do things that are of interest to you and hearing different perspectives and getting that feedback really gives you an authentic piece of information to incorporate into your own planning process. My mom, love to quote my mom, always told me that good decisions often happen when you have the best information. So as sort of instinctive researchers at heart and engineers, go out and find that best information for yourself so that you can make some good choices. So let's dive into the chats. Layla, to start us off, can you just share with us a brief timeline of your journey as a scientist?
Thank you. Well, hello everyone. First, I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me. It's definitely an honor to be here, to be able to share my journey, and I hope that inspires some of the audience here. So coming back to how I started my journey, I am from Iran. I grew up there. And when I was just always growing up, I was very passionate about science and technology. And in Iran, our university, system is slightly different from the US. And so after high school, I directly entered medical school. And that was a lot of, my parents wanted to be a medical doctor, and lots of like society influence was leaded to that choice. But when I study like medical school, I realized I don't like it as much. I really like mathematics and just solving formulas and equations, and was looking at the course curriculum at the medical school, and I realized the only thing was just physics for optometry and for glasses. So I changed my major. That time it was kind of taking a risk of getting a major was not completely known. It was a new major established at University of Tehran, and in biotechnology, which was kind of like intersections of biology and engineering. So at that time it was a very new field. It was long time, I would say. That time, we have right now so much biological data available, but it was in 2004, 2005. We just started sequencing human genome. The whole field of using engineering biology was relatively new, especially computer science and biology. So I felt like I was very fortunate because I like mathematics, and I had, I was hearing a lot about medicine. I studied medical school. So when I heard that some of the professor at our university was like one of the only people who were actually doing this type of research at the University of Tehran, that they were doing basically bioinformatics research, I was so excited and about the field. I was like, wow, this is so cool. I could use mathematics in biology and medicine. So I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. So I was very fortunate to find that very early in my career, what type of research I like to do. And I just kept basically doing the research at that time, just taking classes, I was just by myself, was taking interdisciplinary classes. I was getting classes with CSS students, which was not required, but I was just thinking it was interesting. And just continuing the research, I moved to Switzerland and just continued the same research over there. And when I was applying for grad school, of course, the MIT Biological Engineering department was was the top. I was at Ernest Frankel lab, and I remember I was reading his papers, and I was having his papers as a journal club. while I was doing my master thesis in Iran, and I was very fascinated by his research. So I was very fortunate to got to MIT and be able to work with him for my PhD. So even though I know my passion about science, I didn't know actually how I want to use science in my career. And that was something, it was really discovered during my PhD at MIT. And because when also like the opportunities are different from where I grew up compared to the US. So when I was growing up in Iran or like in undergrad, I didn't know I had opportunities that exist like as entrepreneurship or different type of industry positions. So the only thing I know that exists for me was academic paths. And I didn't even know about any other paths until actually I got to MIT. And then being at MIT and after a couple of years, I realized I'm not too excited about academic paths. And I didn't know exactly, I love the science part, but honestly, I know myself, I didn't like to teach, or I really do not like writing. So I was just really thinking not liking to teach or write, the academic path does not sound like a good option. So it was actually the time I did take advantage of career, the MIT Career Center. I was actually taking some of those quiz or like, what are the things I like? And I was a little bit proactive during the process. I tried really different things. And I was very fortunate because, during the MIT also, there is so many opportunities to try things to see if you like it, you do not like it. So I did internships at a couple of pharmaceutical companies, large pharma, to like kind of realizing what the industry look like, what's the culture of a large pharmaceutical company is. I did consulting projects, there's like just management consulting, because I know some of the people at MIT were taking those classes. And at some point I got this entrepreneurship bug through my friends, and was just mostly like, talking with lots of my peers and seeing what they like to do and what are the career paths they consider. And by talking to them, I was really, I learned about more entrepreneurship, and it was very new for me because in Iran or in where I grew up, the culture of a startup doesn't exist as it is here. So I was literally, I remember the first time I heard about it, I just went to MIT Sloan Catalog and I find this class. It was saying how to turn an idea to a startup. I was, oh, this is a cool class. And I just registered for it. And I just took the class, and I was just basically start learning about entrepreneurship. And even that time, I didn't think I could use science for entrepreneurship because I just didn't think that's possible. But just taking more classes and I was learning more, I realized like, wow, I could actually make a startup out of my PhD research because I loved my PhD. And during the whole time, I loved the science part, but I just didn't know in what application of my science is going to be to the world. And I really find it very fortunate to be able to be exposed to the ecosystem that was available for me at MIT to explore different career paths and then finding the one that was the right fit for me and just take it from there. I think I'll pause here, but I'll be happy to get more into deep to the different parts later.
That's great. Thanks. Talk about really drinking from the fire hose, right? Woo, Layla, you that's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Okay, Nick, your turn. Give us a brief timeline of your path.
Path as a scientist. Well, I started doing research, believe it or not, the first quarter of my freshman year of college. I did college in California at Stanford. And
That other school.
I was just such I was just such a nerd that it was kind of the thing that made sense for me. I really enjoyed doing research as an undergrad. And then I ended up starting a company in undergrad. We raised $5 million, launched the company, licensed the IP from Stanford. It was kind of a spin out, and I kind of cut my teeth as an entrepreneur. So when I made the transition into grad school, I had some pretty strong line of sight into what I wanted to do. I knew that whatever I was going to do, I wanted it to be at least tangentially related to venture creation, starting new companies, commercializing and industrializing cutting edge science. And, I think MIT was really an ideal place to be. First of all, it's in Boston. Boston has a sort of gravitational pull for all things biotech and pharma. The second is that it's MIT. So it was a fantastic place to explore, having all the cool research tools and tricks at your disposal. And so I was able to really lever the MIT brand and network, I feel. Expanding my network, being able to find some mentors to help me find my path as I, explored from internships at Flagship to, working as a consultant for very early stage companies, some that were venture backed. And then, eventually I started working also, I think it was mentioned, Naren mentioned it. Eventually I got an opportunity to actually do some consulting in banking. And so it provided a totally different perspective on the world. And so that's kind of my trajectory. I knew what I wanted to do fairly early on. The route to actually realizing what I would end up doing, what I'm doing today, was obvious.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. I'm curious for the audience, if you just want to throw it into the chat, can you throw into the chat how many of you are either in grad school right now or thinking about going to grad school? I'm just curious if anyone out there in the audience in grad school or going to grad school, if you can just throw it into the chat. Anyone thinking about it in grad school? Thinking about it? Okay.
By the way, put your other questions in there too. We will probably handle most of them at the end, but it'll be good for us to have a run.
Yeah, definitely. Feel free to ask whatever questions. So Layla, I'm going to flip to you and I'm going to ask, for your current role, obviously you chose to go to graduate school and you chose to get a doctoral degree. So when you're thinking back from being an undergrad, can you share, did you absolutely know that you had to go to grad school? And thinking back now, given that you did and doing what you're doing, did you have to go to grad school? I know that you did, because obviously we're here now and you're telling us your story, but did you have to go? And is that what you would recommend for people wanting to be, do you need that for this type of work?
It's a hard question to answer for other people, but when I was in undergrad, I love school. I was always so passionate about science and academic. I was some of those nerds which was very happy when the schools start. So I was always, even when I was in undergrad, I was thinking what's coming after a PhD. So I was actually looking I didn't want to stop. So I definitely I didn't have those doubts of moving to graduate school. But it's hard to say for other people. It's depend on, I know I talk with lots of people like to take maybe a couple of years of industry experience before moving to graduate school. I mean, if I had that, I think maybe it will help me a little bit on the graduate school process or maybe doing different things, but I never had the industry experience until I was in the middle of my PhD and I took a couple of internships. So if I was going back, I wish I would have captured more also industry experience during the time. So it might have helped me navigating my PhD project or where I want to be more informative or in a more, purposeful way. But I never had I never doubted, if I go back, I'll definitely get a PhD again. I think I just always enjoyed learning. And I think that's, so for me, it was I had a clear path so that I wanted to do that. But again, it's hard for other people. It's very dependent on the personal interest. In biotech and pharma specifically, having a graduate degree, I would say it's not necessary, but it's really helpful because lots of the work we are doing, it's so specific. I know lots of people who could be very successful not having a PhD. But I think in the biotech pharma industry, compared to other industries, it might be a bit more necessary than other just general tech industry to have a graduate degree and be a special in some areas.
Yep. Great. Thanks for that feedback. So Nick, what's your perspective? Did you need, you graduated from undergrad, you founded a company, you were doing gangbusters. Did you need to go to grad school? Did you want to go to grad school? Why'd you go to grad school?
Well, gangbusters, that's your word, Ellen. I surely didn't feel that way as an undergraduate. I always felt like I was dropping the ball. And so I thought, you know, I did not want to go to grad school. I knew that a bunch of people had PhDs working in pharma and drug discovery. And so I thought, wow, well, the industry, they have PhDs. It looks like I got to get a PhD. I wouldn't, by the way, I would not recommend that as your decision tree. It was very reductionist of me. I didn't enjoy grad school, unfortunately. I like the actual schooling part of it, like being in the lab and doing experiments. I liked thinking about these things. I liked finding ways to find other people to do to do that, which is kind of my job right now. But for me, grad school was actually very painful. And so it's only until recently that I really have been able to understand the value of, I think as Layla mentioned, being a specialist. You know, when I've been fundraising, during times when I've been fundraising for my company, Epitor, I've interacted with a lot of venture capitalists that have MBAs or they have JDs. They do not have PhDs or even masters in science. And there's certainly a delta between those investors who can do financial models, right, and understand, you know, how to read a Nature Review article from, you know, kind of the 10,000, 30,000 foot perspective, and then those that really understand mechanistic biology, people who understand data science algorithms and who can speak Layla's same language. That's a select part of the world. And I'm now, in retrospect, very glad that I get to participate at that level with people, other people who do have PhDs. And so it really is a question about how passionate you are about understanding the stuff that you end up wanting to do, if that makes any sense. That's how, at least that's the way that I discuss myself.
Yep, that does make a lot of sense, for sure. Your internet is sometimes fantastic and sometimes a little laggy, but your answers are so compelling and interesting that it'll be okay. Ooh, I like that picture. But Nick, I want to dovetail back on something you just said about grad school not being a great experience for you. So I want to know, for those in the audience who are considering grad school, applying to it right now, or might be in it, what's sort of your life lessons that you can pay it forward on how to potentially prepare, or while you're in it, to make grad school a better experience? How do you design the best path? Where do you find the best mentors? How do you rely on your peers? Where do you find that resilience, support, any of those sorts of things?
Well, I would certainly say focus more on geography than I did. I had never thought about living in Boston, right? And so moving to Boston and experiencing the frozen tundra was not a pleasurable experience for me. You know, MIT is MIT, right? It kind of self-selects. It has a certain swagger. It's a certain type of person. That was less of an issue, but it's the other hours that kind of frame your experience in grad school that, by the way, impact your life. And I had such a simple view of just going to grad school and spending, you know, the first half of my 20s doing research. And I didn't really think about the person that I wanted to be outside of the lab. You know, when I was applying to grad school. And those things actually really matter, right? Are you going to be able to find someone to date? Are you going to be able to go enjoy art, engage in culture? You know, Boston may have not been the best city for that relative to New York or London or Paris or, you know, you name it. And so those are some things that I would strongly recommend that you think about ahead of time. Now, I did benefit, however, from having a broad network of mentors who were able to kind of guide me on a personal basis as well as a professional basis. So that's something that I would recommend, whether or not you are loving your grad school experience and popping champagne bottles every Friday and just living it up, or if you were a little bit like me and you treated the PhD as sort of a functional degree.
Yeah, Layla, I see you smiling. Do you have anything to add there in terms of maybe advice that you would want to pay it forward? Obviously, you took advantage, I think, of a lot of mentors and tapping into a lot of people. You found their research really interesting, and you sort of connected with them and really sort of found your shining moments. What sort of advice might you give people as they're thinking about it and considering it?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the grad school time could be very challenging. There's definitely ups and downs during the way. So I was just thinking about it. And there was times during the grad school life, I was in the downs, and there was really good times too. Some of the things that I think made it really good times for me, in addition to the mentors, was a really good group of friends and peers that I had. I think that really helped me. I was very fortunate. I think at some point I was living on the graduate dorms. I was involved in the student government, so it really helped me to get to know people from different departments at MIT, and that actually really helped me for the career wise. So it wasn't just that I was learning from my peers in the BE department specifically and their career options, but like having friends from different departments, from MECI, ECS, and seeing how they do, like how they find different jobs, how they look at different internships or different career paths, really open up my eyes of broader opportunities between MIT at MIT. And I think one of the other things was very helpful for me. I started like taking lots of classes from different departments. So I was taking lots of classes from Sloan, so I got a minor at MIT Sloan, and that ended up actually, I met some of my mentors actually during taking some of the classes. So and because the MIT professors are really nice and they really connect with you. So I remember some of the most mentors that I had during grad school, they're right now on the advisory board of my company. I have actually taken their classes, and then I followed up with them. And they're usually like to help you. So it was really helpful for me. Like one of my board members who's like an independent board member in my company, and he's been very, crucial person to developing my company, has given me really amazing advice from the early on. I took his class at the Sloan, and I just literally pitched the idea of my company at that time to him. And at that time, it was literally just an idea. And he really helped me. He had brutal discussion with me. Like, he was giving me very constructive feedback, which at the time might have been like hard to hear. But now looking back, it's been really important and helpful for me. And I got involved in different competitions as well as different accelerator programs. And I got lots of my mentors through just attending and participating to those competitions. So, and we just developed mentorship relationships that actually last beyond that period of that, MIT, I was at MIT Sandbox, at Delta V, Start MIT, all of them. And then some of those things, they lead to become a mentors, just having a mentor for that program, having a mentor for life, then they become your investor, or they could even, introduce you with their network. So I'm still in touch with many of the people I met during MIT, just being exposed and participating in different, opportunities was available at MIT and following up. I think that was the important piece, because just following up and keep, making the relationships that you have to connect with some people, and you connect better with some mentors than the other one, and just following up on that. I think that would be my advice.
Great, that's great. So we've got some great questions that have come in, and I think since we're sort of talking about sort of the graduate school experience, before we move on to some other questions that might be dealing more on sort of like your current leadership roles, I think we should dive into these, because it seems like that's hitting some interest here. What we've done in the past, for those of you who haven't joined us for other sessions, is we typically ask the person who is asking the question if they want to unmute themselves and come on camera and ask the questions of our guests. So Mark, if you are willing, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, definitely. Let me see if I can phrase and compress this. I think for me, so, I've been a software engineer for like almost a decade, really interested in life science, and I'm just thinking through my different options. I think like a PhD is kind of a, it feels like a commitment. It's like a whole thing, a 6-year track, it's a very particular thing. And often it like is geared for academia, but I think it can vary. I think for me, like one thing that I would love, and which I'm trying to do right now, like I'm just doing a lot of reading and learning about different science on my own, trying to like look, and like my vague plan is just let me find research that's really interesting, reach out to the scientists directly through their academic emails, and just maybe see if I can work with them on different projects. I think I'm just brainstorming like, are there alternatives to like being able to work on substantial projects with researchers like through your own kind of hustling or whatever path. But at the same time, like I've heard, I guess, two things. One is that academia can be kind of hard to break into. And also it can be really hard on your own to figure out what the substantial real research questions in the field are. A lot of it is, there's a lot of, it can be hard to find the information yourself. So I don't know, I'm just kind of curious what the path is. I think my goal is just to kind of start going and start working on these projects, but I don't want to necessarily enter this program and like take the classes. And I think you have to take the GREs and there's a whole thing. But I'm not sure if you'll have thoughts, just trying to give some of where I'm at. Yeah.
It's a great question. And I think that I bet you other people are thinking it as well. So Layla, Nick, should I throw it to you?
Sure, I have a strong opinion. Opinion on that. If you have a decade of work experience, please, by God, do not go back and get a PhD in science. Your liquidity on the job market is high as someone who has a skill set that you do, computer science. In particular, if you have any data science expertise, I mean, you're a hot commodity in the life sciences and in other industries as well. There are multiple ways to explore your interests, right? The first would be if you're interested in actually working in a company that is focused on human health, public health, and data, right? Or consumer health and data. I mean, there's many opportunities to do that, either from the diagnostic and sort of clinical side, or just in terms of the logistics side and supply chain side, such as PillPack, for example, right? And so you have this huge dynamic range of different things you can do on the professional side. Now, if you're thinking more on the side or the end of a hobby, right? Like things that you would just like to have as personal projects. One of the good things about being part of the MIT family or the MIT network is that you have a direct line of access to the Media Lab or to, God, what is it called? All the research centers in the Kendall Square area that do cutting edge life science research, right? And there are always more questions, more intriguing projects than there are people available to actually help and execute those projects. And so I can just foresee you having a lot of opportunities if you just start prodding the network. And I would recommend doing that.
Mm-hmm. Does that help?
It helps a lot. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. So Josh and Ava, I know that your question in the chat was somewhat dovetailing on Mark's question. Do either of you want to hop on and add any additional context for either for Layla or for Nick to continue answering, or was that answer helpful to you both as well?
Yeah, this is Josh here. Would love to chip in a little more and just hear about your decisions around getting direct industry experience, especially post-academia, working either at a larger company or even at a biotech or other startup. From my perspective, currently at a startup and trying to get some of that experience and trying to balance how much of it I should get prior to maybe trying my own thing or branching out and striking that right balance over time. So any comments there would be very much appreciated.
Layla, any thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think it depends if you have your own idea and I was in the position that if you have your idea, just go for it and just do it. Definitely it does help to have some industry experience. I just started my company right out of grad school. I did have a couple of internships during grad school that I did at pharma. It is helpful. It was helpful for me to understand the culture of those companies and how it works. But if it depends on your idea. If you have something that you think is promising, I would say just go for it. I mean, having industry experience is helpful, but sometimes you get used to the comfortable life and it might be harder to transition, but in grad school the life is already, it's challenging, so you're used to it. But again, I mean, people I've heard different people feedback as well. Some people told me, no, it's really helpful to have some experience then start your own thing. There are some studies and papers out there that they look at the age of the first time entrepreneurs, and the one that are more successful, they were also a little bit older in their career life. So I don't disregard those information either, but if you have something super promising, you think it's gonna work, I would encourage you to follow up. Or there's also books about this 20% entrepreneurship, or you explore some of the ideas you have while you are having your full-time position, and then you figure out when is the right time to leave. And then when you have some tractions, and then your idea is cooked more, and then you think you need that, your idea now need your 100% time, full-time, that maybe that's the right time to move to. But just leaving your job without having a fully cooked idea, that might not be the ideal situation either.
So Josh, you feel like you have the right sort of people to tap into for advice on whether it is I mean, like, how far along are you in your concept? Like, would you be looking to somebody like a Layla or a Nick, not necessarily for their specific advice, but for advice on where do you go? Where's like the ecosystem to tap into to know if you're on the right track?
Yeah, I think a little bit of that. I mean, helpful to hear your point on just the idea and how strongly you feel about it. Like, I have the idea, it's now or never. I think for me, it's also just thinking about the broader skill set of driving and managing a team, recruiting a team, and things that feel very critical to me. Maybe I'm biased from recent work experience, but in addition to the idea itself. And so I think I'm at a crossroads where I'm trying to establish how much of those I want to get versus the idea is good enough. Let's just focus in on that.
Mm-hmm.
But your response was very helpful there, Layla.
Great. Nick, any additions to that? Okay, great. Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Ava, anything that you wanted to add? I know that your question also was sort of similar in there. Feel free to hop on if you want to add any additional questions.
Sure. So I realize, I think after hearing Mark's perspective, that mine is a little bit different in that I'm still very early career. I graduated in 2019 and just worked a year and started my master's, I guess, mixed graduate program at MIT this past September. And so I'm contemplating the master's PhD dilemma, especially since I'm a little less like pharma focused and a little more medical devices, maybe figuring that out focused. And I came from a company that was very R&D heavy and placed fairly strong emphasis on graduate degrees in terms of being able to advance at particular timelines. But I don't know how indicative that is of the rest of kind of biotech, pharma, med device focused industries, and just wanted to kind of get a perspective on generally the idea of a PhD being valuable because people will perceive you as a specialist and as someone who has been through the rigor, but then also the potential that if you get a PhD, let's say in immunology, for example, now that is the one thing that you'll be doing for the rest of your time. I don't know if that's just an unfounded fear or if that's something that maybe you think is valid and is worth considering.
It's a good question.
Oh, Nick's definitely got some thoughts on that.
Well, no,
that's why I figured I'd ask.
It's a good question, and I think this is the right question to ask early on in your process, right? So you don't need a PhD, right? We just went through a mantra about how you don't need a PhD to be in the industry, et cetera. But as you noted, it can actually be very difficult to get that nice vision for upward mobility within highly hierarchical organizations, unless you are that point contact person who just checks the box for the PhD. It is a filter that is kind of been adopted for the industry, for better or for worse. Now, if you said to yourself, hey, I don't want to do benchtop work, or I don't want to do the academic work related to medical devices as a grad student, I would rather get industry experience and then maybe another professional degree, such as an MBA, I would actually strongly endorse that opportunity. or that decision, because it could allow you to do different things. Whereas a PhD, are you in electrical engineering or biomedical engineering or
So mechanical.
mechanical engineering? So, with a mechanical engineering degree, I mean, you're going to have, I would imagine, quite a variance in terms of what you might be able to do with the master's. That's not exactly the case in pharma, right? It's just different world. And so you do have flexibility to consider whether or not you might want to be that tried and true PhD, card carrying, you wear the sash, you get the little pin, or if you might instead want to do the MBA and maybe think about a different part of the business. Maybe it'll be marketing, maybe it'll be product design, maybe it won't be R&D at the molecular level, right? And so getting a sense for really where your appetite and where your passion lies, I think should be the right forcing function for this decision. But it's a good question to ask.
Layla, do you have any other, or do you have a different perspective that you might want to add?
I think, so one thing I think that definitely the advice Nick was giving was amazing. One other thing that I don't think people, like, if you get a PhD at something, then for the rest of your life, you have to do the same research. I don't think that's gonna be true either, because I think one of the things I value just for the PhD students compared to, I mean, we hire some PhDs and the project they're doing is not directly relevant to what they did during their PhD project, but the things we care about is just the ability to do problem solving. And I think that's something, if I want to hire someone as a PhD, that I value more is just they went through a process that they learn independently how to think and how to solve a problem, and the ability to present and articulate those findings. That's something I've learned more, like the PhD students usually do better. But I don't think, like, if you get a PhD and you do 5 years of postdoc immunology, then people will expect you to just do immunology. But if you just get a PhD in a specific area, I don't think it will just close your options of doing broader, different research topics. But again, it depends what you are interested and passionate about. If you want to do science and research, then maybe PhD is a good position. But if you are more interested in other aspects that Nick mentioned, like, marketing and the business organization, maybe MBA or just the work experience will get you there faster than getting a PhD.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you so much. Lillian, did you want to ask anything in addition to these questions or responses? I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't, which is fine. Okay, so I'm gonna move on.
So I actually had something which, and maybe we're about to get to this as well, but
Sure,
I think we've got, in a sense, a bit of a rarity here in that we have two extraordinarily talented, young, independent biotech entrepreneurs, which is to say, you see this in tech all the time. People can go and raise a seed round or a Series A and go start their own company. In biotech, especially in Boston, the ecosystem is dominated by people with gray hair in large venture creation firms, and it is very hard to be an independent entrepreneur. And both of you have followed this path of independent entrepreneurship, so it would be wonderful to hear a bit more about that and how you've navigated those challenges of raising funding and being taken seriously despite being independent, as opposed to part of a flagship or a Third Rock or other such ecosystem.
I mean, that's a really good question. I mean, so there's something to think about. If you want to be an entrepreneur in the biotech industry, I would really encourage you to think about what that means, what that looks like. Because I think what gets sold, at least primarily at MIT, I know at other schools as well, is that if you go into an associate program at one of these big blue chip, kind of starry, sparkly funds, that is a meaningful and kind of the only way to have a meaningful entrepreneurial experience in the industry. The reality is that there is very little entrepreneurship in biotech, from what as far as I'm concerned. What I mean by that is that the only entrepreneurs that really gain the traction, the spotlight, they're venture capitalists. They start companies within these large organizations that are siloed, that are well resourced, and they can scavenge innovation from academic institutions, right? It's super rare for people like Layla to actually take their doctoral work and find a way to commercialize that work, to monetize that work, to solve a problem that is actionable and interesting for the industry, right? Relevant for the industry at scale. That's really, really hard. Unfortunately, there are really no resources to enable kind of what Layla and I have decided to do. It's a little bit like you got to throw yourself out there. You have to have a strong enough foundation. You also have to have sufficient conviction, I'll say, that what you're working on is important. Because kind of back to my my comment about engaging with lots of venture capitalists that don't have the technical background, right? They don't even have a master's sometimes. Not the master's, not the PhD. They didn't go to MIT for undergrad, so they already get a -1. But you know, in engaging with them, sometimes they have no idea. They work in the industry and they have no idea when a breakthrough is crossing, you know, is coming before them. And so it's just something to keep in mind. Something to keep in mind. I actually recommend, someone asked about getting industry experience, right? And I think that was, the question was kind of framed such as, do you get it before the PhD or do you get it after PhD before you become an entrepreneur? Well, I'd actually say you should take the page out of Layla's book and my book and actually gain your entrepreneurial sea legs, so to speak, during your PhD. I'll tell you this, you'll never ever have more support infrastructurally, institutionally, as an entrepreneur than you do when you're a grad student. And so it makes for a very nice, convenient foil for an entrepreneurial experience. I would really recommend people to go out, if you're in grad school or if you're considering grad school, when you're in grad school, consider getting your feet wet, exploring the ecosystem, building your network, starting to refine your ideas, understand what's going on, and also understand why things are the way that they are in terms of financings for companies, in terms of which schools are able to start up new startups as opposed to other ones, and why that might be. When you go through that discovery process, it'll be a lot easier to decide whether, you know, kind of the go it alone entrepreneurial story is really for you or not.
Yeah. Layla, I think my question that I want to ask you is, in terms of obstacles and sort of dovetailing on Narain's question is, you know, here you are as a woman entrepreneur coming out of grad school, to Nick's point, with an idea and now with a company. You know, I'm a woman. I'm sure there are some other people here that are just curious about what that process was like for you. And what the obstacles might have been, or the one, I mean, clearly we're not going to take any obstacles, but I'm just curious as to what those were and what sort of advice you have.
No, it's been definitely many obstacles, and it's been definitely very challenging because people don't take you so seriously when you just after grad school. There happened multiples of times. I pitched to the investors and were telling me that, oh, the only way that this works, that you have to make a pharma company and you're a young woman and you cannot do that. I mean, that was exactly the reason, that you're young and you're a woman, you cannot become a CEO of a pharma company. So it's not going to work, and don't waste your time. There was the feedback I've gotten several times. And it was, of course, definitely very hard to, you know, hear those things. And I think the biggest thing is just having resilience and, you know, believing in yourself and taking no for an answer. And it's just, you know, just get more energy to prove them wrong and just keep doing it. And I would say second on what Nick was saying, that if you are in graduate school, I think that was a really good time to explore. Because initially when I started, there was many obstacles. It was very hard to compete with all those companies that get 30 million just starting from flagship, or, you know, from those VCs that exist in the biotech, you know, in our very close to us with all amount of money, and they could do anything they want. And for us just starting from scratch with no basically prior experience, some people will doubt you on those things. Being at the school and trying to figure out different parts of it while you're still a graduate student, while you have a supportive ecosystem, that was very helpful for me. I was basically, you know, start my conversation with pharma companies while I was in graduate school. I took, and I think there's lots of really amazing opportunity to be able to explore your ideas while you are still a student. And I was fortunate to take leverage of those opportunities and get market traction. So investors were saying no. Investors are the one that are the most, you know, not trusting you. But then I got pharma interested. So I got paying customers from pharma, and they were willing to pay me to work with this, you know, startup was just coming out of MIT with no experience and no full-time employee. You were still at MIT. And I think when the investors saw that, I was like, oh, that, because they didn't get the exact tech, was, oh, there might be something that these big pharma companies are willing to risk or work with them. I think those things that when we receive, when we get market traction, when we focus on our customers first, then they're making investors happy, then they were saying, oh, wow, they may do something right. And then we gradually, you know, take more market traction, prove ourselves, hit our milestone, and grow on that. And then, you know, we were able to find, I mean, of course, not everyone believe in you, but then you find the people who believe in you and your vision, and they support you. And we were very fortunate to, you know, have those people around us that, you know, supporting us and keep us going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you know, I think you and Nick have done amazing jobs at finding those people who do believe in you, who see the potential, who cheer you on when the doors have been closed in your faces, and keep you going. And if we could figure out how to bottle that or teach it to everyone else, I think that would be a great startup. But you know, I guess in the meantime, just sort of hearing how you've persevered through those challenges, I think is also just helpful to hear. So just shifting gears a bit until we can get some other questions to come in. When you're hiring people for the roles that you're hiring for, and maybe you can even talk about what some of those roles might be, what are you looking for skill sets from your candidates, and what excites you most, and what are sort of the things that you sort of hone in on? Are you looking for those? I guess it depends on the role, but is it those do you give street cred more to the technical skills, or to the people skills, or to the ability to sell you on themselves in the room? I mean, what really is sort of the thing that works best in those interviews for you?
Ooh, me, Ellen.
Please.
I'll jump in here because this is very front of mind. So I'm recruiting this week. So it's a whole week of interviews and kind of doing that dance with new people. Oh, it's so nice to meet you. How are you? Okay, wow. How's the pandemic? Right? Are you enjoying yourself? And the interesting thing is, you know what? It's both. You asked whether we are focusing on the personal skills or the technical skills. Well, you know, in the industry, you end up finding that technical skills are kind of a dime a dozen, right? What is a little bit rarer, a lot of bit rarer, are those soft skills, the EQ. I mean, I've interviewed, you know, kind of very, very accomplished people at, you know, pharma companies, and they say the darndest things. You'd be really surprised that they kind of get away with the way that they express themselves sometimes. You know, they'll make disparaging comments about certain groups of people in an interview, right? Or they'll call certain questions, you know, or prompts during the interview as weird or bizarre or non-standard. I like the younger people more, and I know this sounds horrible, But I like the younger people more because they really, people I think in our generation, right, really have changed people from different backgrounds, right? And so they're bringing a little bit more of that familiarity, that kindness, that fraternity, in addition to that deep energy about learning and mastering something new or building something new. And sometimes, you know, kind of the tried and true veterans in the industry lack a little bit of that. And so as a CEO, I have to make a trade-off between candidates as I start to build the organization. You know, how much of this do I want to become a family type of unit? And how much of this do I just want to, you know, order a whole harem of kind of like line chefs, right? Or line cooks to just do technical things. You know, we spend a lot of time with the people that we end up working with. And so you kind of want to like those people, right? As it turns out. And by the way, I didn't realize this until I was actually doing interviews myself, interviewing people myself. The best way to ace an interview is, of course, to have the kind of basic requirements. That's maybe obvious here. But it's also to make sure that the people across the table actually like you. And it's not very hard to do that. It's not very hard to get someone to like you. One way to get people to like you is to ask them questions about themselves, right? Ask them questions about the company. It's amazing to me. There are so many people who I interview who, you know, we'll go through an entire interview just talking about all the fantastic things they've done, especially in the current job that they are looking to leave, which is a little bit, I think, ironic, right? Instead, the candidates that I end up progressing and that end up meeting the rest of the team are people who ask me, so what the hell are you working on? And why is it important? Why is it the next best thing? And why should I dedicate the next couple of years, at least, of my life on this new opportunity, right? And I think, you know, in retrospect, now I wish I had this foresight when I was interviewing for jobs or exploring internships or exploring consulting engagements. I wish I had a little bit more focus on, wow, you know, how can I actually make people just enjoy being around me?
Mhm.
It's not about the technical.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what those insights are really great. So maybe the meritocracy doesn't rule everything, that there is room for those sort of human skills.
It's non-obvious, especially coming from MIT.
Right.
No
right.
offense to MIT, right? But
Mhm.
it's not obvious that just checking that mark that I went to MIT or I went to another fancy school will not, you know, give you the pass go at every step. It unfortunately doesn't work like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, good insights. Layla, I'm sure maybe you don't do any hiring. Maybe people don't get to you unless it's like, you know, those really, really, you know, high profile positions. But I'd be curious to what your feedback is on that.
No, we do actually hire, and we have a position open too that we are hiring as well. We've been hiring since it started. Like, that's just an ongoing process, which is exciting to grow. And definitely, I would just the behavioral, behavioral attitudes matter as much as technical. I wouldn't say we only hire someone who is a good cultural fit or behavioral fit, because the technical matter, but definitely, you know, how people behave, the small follow-ups that they would have after the interviews matter a lot. And for us, it's become a part of the culture fit that we have in our company. And one thing that's really important for us is the passion that they would have, the passion to learn, the passion to grow, and the passion about the science we are doing, and the passion about the impact of our science. Because as a startup, we have to work very hard. And I told everyone who I interview usually, I was like, hey, we are not a 9-to-5 company. And if that's what you're looking for, it's not the position. But we want the people who want to grow, and we want them, give them the opportunity to grow. And for us as a startup, we do so many different things that it was not maybe initially in the role or in the position. So we want to have people who could learn very rapidly about different topics. So these are the things that we care the most, I would say, out of the interview process. Of course, we do care about the technical background, and then we have our own, like, technical challenge that we usually give to candidates, but many candidates score very similar. So it's very hard to say, oh, this person is the best. And I did have interviewed people from top universities who were technically very strong, but none of us liked them. And I was like, okay, we did not hire them, even though they were very strong technically.
Yep.
So definitely, liking the people who would join. And then again, I care a lot more about their career goals and their passion, and to make sure that's something that's aligned with our goal in the company as well.
Mhm.
Yes.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks for those insights. So we have some questions in the chat, so I'm going to bounce in, but I think I'm going to maybe have Narain sort of take over and ask some of the questions in the chat. And I think Mira is up next, so I will have her come on camera, and Narain, you can take over and facilitate those chat questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we might have started to touch on some of the questions in the chat already, but Mira, if you would like to follow up, please do go ahead. Especially on the co-founder point, I'm quite interested in that myself.
Sorry, I didn't hear the last part.
I said it's a good question you've asked, especially on the co-founder point, and especially in a pandemic when we're all meeting over Zoom. I share your curiosity about that.
Yeah. So I'm currently a grad student in a bioengineering program. So a lot of what you said about grad school has resonated with me, and I've been thinking about, I guess I want to know like how you guys went about choosing co-founders or first employees. You touched on hiring a little bit, and in the abstract, like having a company, like setting companies' values and principles, but in choosing that, since they will then set, who you would hire in the future and really be on this journey with you. And also as a second one, since y'all were grad students, how has your perspective changed from being a grad student who does all the day-to-day science and is really in the weeds of like how this algorithm works to being the CEO of your own venture and maybe taking a step back from the weeds of science? And would you change anything during that transition?
Really good question. Super great question. I want to start with the last part of your question, which was, the transition from being day-to-day in the science versus, I'm sorry to report, there's no escaping it. There's no escaping the science. Actually, you know what? When you become CEO, or even when you don't have to be CEO, if you're in an early stage company, there are so many things to do that are so uninteresting. It makes benchtop science feel like, the angels are cooing, the clouds are opening, like payroll taxes. I mean, why would I want to do that as a hobby, right? And yet I have to do these things, right? Accounting and bookkeeping, making sure I can, massage the investors and make sure that they're all easy and breezy and happy, right? I would rather be doing science. And so the weeks that I most enjoy my job, we're working with some new data, we're working in a new program or with a new partner, and things are happening, and we're getting signal about how to develop the company, how to direct or guide our programs, our discovery programs. And that's what I love most about the CEO process, right? Now, the co-founder thing, I kind of cheated because my doctoral advisor is my scientific co-founder, in addition to kind of a world expert in this biology from Harvard. So kind of boring, right? I actually would strongly recommend, if your PI is at all relevant for the company that you end up starting, anyone on this call, and I think this is also really important, if they have an entrepreneurial bone in their body, in which case, we had to search for it, but I found it in my doctoral advisor. And it turns out he did, and he was willing to jump off the bridge with me, right? And it has been incredibly, it's been an incredible bonding experience to build something and to see something move from just an idea to gaining traction, really gaining its own identity, like a new narrative for like, what is the opportunity here? And then also some very clear operational plans. You know, without the founders who were world's experts in this biology, without some of the first hires who were world's experts in this biology because they were in the lab with me, right? It would have been much more difficult to get that brain power, that collective brain power, to level up the thinking of the organization at inception. And so that was a really critical process. It has now laid this nice foundation where anyone joining us kind of they have to have the same tattoo, right? They have to have the same tattoo. They have to speak the same language. They have to have that same energy, that same purity of engagement with the opportunity in order to really to fit the culture, I'll say. But that's been my experience, and it's actually been it's been great, especially when we get to focus on the science.
I didn't know if Layla wanted to chime in.
Yeah, I could add a few more sentences here too. I also co-founded the company with my PhD advisor, which is very helpful because they're the person who co-invented the technology with you. They have way more experience, you know, before I started. For me, my PhD advisor, he was not, it was actually the first company came out of our lab. So he wasn't before has done any entrepreneurship, but I was very fortunate that he supports me. So I did have a conversation with him from in the last 2 years of my PhD. I was like, hey, I'm interested in that. And I want to do something with the PhD and spin it out. And he supported me during the process. So he was, even though he hasn't done it before, he supported me and I had his support during the whole thing. And it was really good to have him on board for sure, moving it forward to any connections we have made and having MIT professors it really helped with spinning out, getting the licensing of the tech from MIT and, you know, expanding to the advisory board and scientific advisory board of the company for sure. The second question about transitioning from the science to the CEO, you know, there is no transition. You will still be involved in the science, which is actually I love too. And I would say actually it's a little bit changing the way you do science. Like when you're a grad student, you get very details of one specific topic, but as a CEO, you have to expand and you actually have to learn new things that maybe you've never done it during your PhD. So it's actually, you have to expand to how to do the problem solving in some areas you've never done and you don't have the experience for it, and guide some of the new people who join your team to do those type of projects. So for us, like we need to expand some areas. Like I didn't do it, for example, even deep learning during my PhD was, but then I have to learn those things because now we are like a big part of our company doing those type of research. So actually I have to learn them myself before hiring, but I still don't know the complete details of them to be able to do it myself, but I know it enough to be able to help other people to develop that in the company while I understand it. So it's a little bit of a different type of science. So I don't need to know too much of a detail, but I need to know enough to be able to know what's going on, because the field is evolving. You want to know what's the biggest technology is going to develop and you want to stay ahead of the curve. So a slight different transition, I would say, than doing the details of the coding and the debugging of its own. But it's lots of fun. I love it, actually, that part a lot more.
That's a great comment, actually, because it segues nicely into two of the other questions we have in the chat. I think I'm going to go to Isaac first so that everybody has a chance to ask a question, but then we'll come back to Mark.
Yeah, sure. So I guess this was prompted by a little bit of what Nick was talking about in terms of being surrounded by an entrepreneurial ecosystem. But you know, anyone else who feels strongly about this, please jump on in. So totally get that in grad school, you're going to be surrounded by an entrepreneurial ecosystem, unlike what you know, maybe have experienced before and will likely be kind of intimately connected to afterwards. What are aspects of that ecosystem that you think are particularly valuable? And I'm wondering if there are any things that you think are maybe actively harmful to folks in the ecosystem, or if there are aspects of the ecosystem that might just be missing entirely.
And if I can add an editorial note, tech licensing.
I got one. Well, wow, you know, the entrepreneurial ecosystem in biotech, which is my world, could really use a heavy dose of diversity, like some kind of seasoning or something special. I don't know. I don't know. Something needs to happen. I don't know. Flash mob. I have no idea. But I just wish that you know, these firms took it a little bit more seriously to have diversity within their workforce, and then also within the companies. That's something that I think we could really do a lot better on, and it's something that is a big focus for me at my company. So that's the only thing that I kind of hate, right? I think, you know, I think, and Layla talked about this a little bit with fundraising. You know, unfortunately, there are entire groups of people who just get written off immediately, based on phenotype, based on ethnic background, based on accent. I've spent so much time working on my accent. I didn't grow up in the United States. That's a real shame. I think it's a shame that people in the industry who are smart, people who have PhDs, they're supposed to be smart, right? I think it's a shame that we collectively as an industry and as an entrepreneurial community haven't quite figured out how to, again, gain those social skills to allow us to think about new ideas from people who don't look exactly like us, right? So that's one thing I would really encourage. There's another thing, which is, wow, I think I wish that it could just be easier to be an entrepreneur. And I wish that there were just more ecosystem, more of an ecosystem of support for entrepreneurs that don't have the ball and chain to a big fund, right? Or a big GP at a big fund. I still haven't kind of cracked the matrix yet. I haven't figured out how to widen the funnel for more academics, founders who would like to start a company. When I do, when I find the cheat code, I will certainly let you all know.
So I guess one thing I'd love to follow up on then, I guess, is I don't want to monopolize this, but I am aware of some students that kind of, when everything went remote in the pandemic, essentially said like, hey, we want to kind of support each other. And so there's a little bit of like a cross MIT, Harvard, like I'd call it like a reading group going on right now, where they basically like kind of highlight different entrepreneurial like case studies, for lack of a better term, every week. And I'm not actively a member of it. I'm not currently a student, but it strikes me as something that could maybe use a good injection of you know, interested alums to kind of be advisors and help build out, you know, a true ecosystem.
Hey, thanks for mentioning that. I would love to participate in any way that is productive or beneficial for the group, right? I'm actually shocked. I'm a little bit speechless to hear that exists. That is exactly sort of the, for lack of a better word, grassroots organizing that we need in the industry, right? So that people can actually start doing some edge testing on their ideas. There's a reason, and it's not just because every venture capitalist is like an evil mongrel who doesn't have any respect for anyone who's under 45 years old. I think the bigger reason is that, look, most entrepreneurs who give it a go at the first time, they're horrible. They're horrible. They don't have the polish. They haven't figured it out. They don't know how to kind of pattern match to fit into the fold. And so they're irrelevant for the way that the industry has decided is the standard to kind of assess deals or opportunities, et cetera. The groups like you're talking about provide an opportunity for peers in a, I would hope, safe environment, not Fight Club, but in a safe environment to really start refining their ideas. And having the support system to do that is actually critical for making sure that people from different backgrounds have access to power, to capital, to employees, right? To other resources as well. So very cool. I'd love to hear more about that.
Cool.
All right, why don't we jump over to Mark again?
Yeah, sorry, I have
Get
another
about
question.
this
Sorry.
intersection between tech and biotech.
Yeah, again, speaking as an engineer, but also jumping off some of the points that were just made. I guess the original question I had was, you know, as a software engineer, you know, and like thinking about maybe in an institution, there's some researchers that are thinking about starting a company. Like, where would I go to meet that special selection of researchers? Unless it's everyone who's thinking of starting a company, or who's looking to do that. But I think there's also a separate question in there, which is just like, as a software engineer, are software engineering skills really what these researchers would be looking for, even if they were able to, even if I was able to meet them? You were talking about like access to different resources and like things that they would need to help them be more entrepreneurial. Like, I have also thought like maybe I should go get an MBA. Maybe I should think about studying the biotech commercialization, et cetera. I'm curious, you know, like for a researcher, like a PhD, they have a new technology, they've been working with their advisor. What are some of the things that they would love to meet people with the skill set of that can help them take their idea to the next level? Yeah.
Layla, you want to take it?
Yeah, I think it depends on what they are doing. If it's something in, you know, data science, definitely software engineering skills is valuable.
Yeah.
There is a part of, you know, the algorithmic that you develop, but there's all the engineering part is also as important, actually, the science part. Actually, when we started my company, the first year we just spent on the engineering side, because we just had, you know, just having a PhD code that works is very different from a PhD code in production. I had just a bunch of code. I actually made it very nice and object oriented, but still it was not scalable. Like making sure like it's user friendly, making sure the thing that you're running, it doesn't require another PhD student with your same knowledge to use it. It's lots of engineering process that happened to make the process automated and scalable. Because if there is no good engineering in place, actually the data science will not be able to use the data efficiently, and it's not scalable to be run on the cloud and in a timely manner. So I think if you are into any biotech or any type of industry that there is data science involved, the engineering as important as the data science part. So I wouldn't think of I think it's definitely the skill set that will be necessary in many scenarios and many cases. Again, finding the right people who would need your, you know, your skill set. You also have to make sure that are they the good companies that you work with, because it's also, you want to also evaluate all the opportunities you would have to apply your skill set. I think lots of people, you know, they attended hackathons. I mean, honestly, I don't know with the pandemic, like the new opportunities or the challenges exist right now. So I would say pre-pandemic time that, you know, there were many opportunities happen, both at MIT and also outside of the MIT. Many of them are open to alumni. It's not just based on the students. I know my friends that they met their co-founders during the hackathons. They had some ideas and they joined. And it's the hackathons a really great opportunity because it's the 3 days intense that you work together. You see if you like the idea, and you also see if you're a good fit to work as a team. And some of them, they move those things forward. So I think there's definitely some of those type of opportunity that you could explore, but I think your skill set as a software engineer is really valuable. We are hiring software engineers too, even right now. And we spend lots of time actually at the engineering side as much as into the data science side. Yeah.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Thanks.
You know, there's a whole ecosystem that's kind of burgeoning right now. Still kind of early as a, I'd say as an industry, as a focus, but there's a whole quorum of investors, right? Andreessen Horowitz, here locally, it's Pillar, Petrie a little bit, Bessemer, General Catalyst, that are focused not on biotech, which is kind of pharma, for lack of a better word. It's just a diminutive way of saying pharmaceutical company, but they're more tech bio. So they're really focused more on the engineering principles, just like Layla said, right? That big delta between concept, alpha, beta, this idea that is functional as a unit versus something that is scalable and deployable across many different instances. And so the engineering of biology, the engineering of data science, to solve or to answer biological questions, or to handle very large, very, very large volumes of patient data. These are entire disciplines in and of themselves. I would actually recommend understanding a little bit of that ecosystem as it stands at the venture kind of stage. And then starting to understand where the patterns are in the ecosystem. If you'll start to pick up on trends, there are certain ways that companies evolve into a venture-backed company, right? Yes, it is true that many of them do start in the academic setting, but what I would really encourage is that you understand, okay, what is it about these hits, these select companies that actually gain traction, that are actually getting coverage by Wired, et cetera? What is making investors invest $200 million, right, into this wild, wonky technology that does drug discovery based on images of cells for phenotypic screens? Once you start doing that, I think it'll give you a bit more of a second nature for being able to process an idea when it comes across to you and it's unrefined, right? And empowered with that skill set, then you can start doing the scavenger hunt where you're boiling the ocean, identifying the fish that pop up to the surface of investigators, PIs, professors, grad students, who may be your next co-founder, right?
That's super helpful as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah, these have been some really insightful answers here from Nick and Layla. I would say let's do a last call for questions now. If you've got something on your mind, burning question, ask it now in the chat, or else I have a wrap-up question, and then I think we'll be done because we're pushing 9 o'clock. Going once, going twice. Okay, last question's mine, I guess. So you both have picked biotech as a field in which to be entrepreneurs, even though both of you seem to be doing a lot of software and tech related product development, unlike, let's say, some company that's focused very much on delivering and developing one compound and taking it through a clinical trial, right? You're doing more sort of drug discovery and platform building. That being said, biotech is still biotech. Biology is perhaps the hardest and most complicated of the sciences. And relative to any other endeavor you could have picked, you will spend a lot more time to get to a similar, shall we say, result or exit or whatever you might personally define as success. So maybe if you could share why you did that, or more importantly, what keeps you going every day.
I think I could start. For me and for my team, I think it's the impact of biotech. That's what makes us excited. It's definitely a hard process, but then if you are seeing at the end, you could save many people's lives, I think that's keep us going. In biotech is even though challenging, the impact is much bigger. And that's what I really like when I think coming back to even the hiring, like I hire lots of data scientists and software engineers, and everyone they're talking about, like, we don't want to write a code that make this advertisement better. You want to write a code that could save people's lives. And that's one of the biggest thing in our company, that you want to save lives with every line of code. So we are very passionate about the impact. Even though it's more challenging, I think the impact is going to be bigger. Entrepreneurship is hard in any way, so it's better to do something that could make a big impact too.
Wow, that's a good question. A little bit of an existential dread to your question, since it's going to take me, according to your question, 25 years to reach my exit. I'm joking. I mean, you're right. Look, it's hard. The predictability is nowhere, right? You can't, on an ad hoc basis, you can't say, hey, this molecule is going to be super safe in phase 2B studies, the pivotal study, right, in this specific patient population. However, using engineering tools, using data science, we hope to get a good sense, a leading indicator of what success might look like, right? we also leverage a lot of engineering tools, as you mentioned, tech, data science, to actually de-risk the process from that target validation through developing a medicine, right? Through validating that the molecule actually engages your target and the specific patient population, and then also making sure that it is not very likely to kill the patient, right? So that it's safe. We use a lot of tools to do that. These are engineering principles to do that. And I think the way that Layla and I do our companies is actually very different than the standard pharma playbook. And so taking the platform play allows us to actually cover, I like to believe, a lot more space, right? This is really modern biotech as opposed to biotech 20 years ago, which might be one gene, one target, make a drug, see what happens, and go as far as you can, raise as much cash as possible. Today, there's also a very robust financing ecosystem. There's a lot of ways to reach your exit. You can partner. And so I think companies like Layla's and mine that are platform companies are really appropriate for a highly transactable asset class, a pipeline, right? A portfolio of assets or services. But then you can also get an IPO, right? Or you can get bought out. Or you can have a direct listing to the public. You know, there's so many different ways that you can actually financially engineer the exit. At the end of the day, you create value by solving a problem, right? And so just like Layla said, if you can help patients live longer, I mean, that has to be the mantra, because you won't ever grow into a great company if you never do that in biotech. And so I think we both share a very common ethos, having been in the same department at the same time, right? A very common ethos about why biotech? And why not just work for Facebook, right?
Great. So before I close it out, I always like to ask panelists, how should we follow you and what you're doing? And how would you want people to follow up with you, if at all?
Wow, you can kind of look on LinkedIn. Nick Davis is my name. It's very, very exotic, I know. Nick Davis, MIT. I think you'll be able to find me. Nick Davis Epitoire, spelled kinda like repertoire, but like epigenetics. Just have fun trying to spell that one or sound it out. Look, I'd love to engage with any of you. If you have any questions, I'll actually put my email in the chat box. Feel free to reach out. More than happy to chat. Pretty casual if you couldn't tell from now. And so would love to help out if at all possible.
Yes, same here for me. I would love to follow up if anyone have questions. I would love to follow up in LinkedIn, Twitter. I'll add my email address here as well. It's my initial with my last name at revivement.io. I will add it to the chat too. I'll be happy to follow up with anyone as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Layla and Nick, for that wonderful discussion, for all of your insight. And thank you all for participating, asking some really thought-provoking questions, and for being such involved alumni. I do want to tell you all to mark your calendars for next month's Brass Rat Chat, which is going to be on December 8th. And our featured alumni guests for that event will be talking about careers focused on social impact. So actually kind of a nice segue off of this conversation about impact in patients' lives. So thank you all again. Wish you a good night, and hope to see you again next month.
Thanks for joining us. And for more information on how to connect with the MIT Alumni Association, please visit our website.